Jonathan and Michael, I'm going to read to you a letter that your mom wrote back in 2005. And she wrote it the night, in the middle of the morning, at 3 in the morning. She got up. I was already up writing a resignation letter. And the previous evening I had met with David Frauenschuh and another gentleman, and following that discussion on issues that were happening at Crossview, I decided that I could not remain president and do the things that they were asking me to do. So I was writing a letter of resignation, and your mom came out and wrote this letter to David Frauenschuh. Dear Mr. Frauenschuh, after Steve shared with me some of the conversation from yesterday's meeting, I feel compelled to share some of my thoughts. I am a registered nurse in the Pediatric Intensive Care Unit in Minneapolis Children's Hospital. I believe I touch many people's lives in a meaningful way as patients and families are facing a devastating illness or a major surgery. Every day I drive to work with a prayer not only to not harm someone, but also to be able to help them through a very difficult situation. I make this prayer realizing that I am only human, and one of my mistakes could inadvertently end someone's life. Built on the recognition of human error, there are many checks and balances in place at the hospital. These keep us very humble and constantly remind us of our limits as human beings. We have had RNs who are defensive about the need to double-check or who are hesitant to ask questions which acknowledge they are uncertain about something, but they generally don't last too long in our unit. Some have caused great harm to patients. I believe that the system of double checks and accountability actually builds a stronger team. There are many of us who would freely share examples of how we have been shown God is ultimately in control and helping us as we imperfect humans do our work. I feel that even though the employees of Crossview are serving God, to allow some of their activities and errors to go unchecked is wrong. They are also merely humans serving to save spiritual lives. There is no room for defensiveness or hiding errors in this profession either. I believe we are doing Crossview a grave disservice by not expecting their accountability. A simple admission of error should be met with, "Thanks for your honesty, let's fix the system so it doesn't happen again." I would argue that with the development of a culture built on the foundation of building God's kingdom, staff could look beyond themselves to realize their errors are not being pointed out to make them look bad, but rather to help them be the best, most accountable group of God's servants possible. I realize my profession is filled with black and white decisions. I would draw the parallel that there are some black and white issues that are not currently being addressed at Crossview. I believe Crossview needs some checks and balances, not to look for fault, but to help with the immense responsibility of building God's kingdom. I would be bold enough to say that Crossview would be a much stronger congregation with more member involvement if we could develop the culture of "we can always improve." We are merely human beings here to serve God. I am writing to you as a member with great influence to ask that we develop a system of checks and balances to ensure that Crossview is serving God in the best, most responsible manner possible. Thank you for your prayerful consideration of this request. Sincerely, Chris Willett. Guys, I was probably never more proud of your mother than when she wrote this letter, because what she was doing is she was saying to me that I'm not to resign, that I'm to stay the course. But this letter, and at the time we were doing this, no one knew that embezzlement, stealing of funds from the church, was actually occurring. We knew that there was a financial issue that had surfaced that needed to be addressed, but we didn't know how bad it really was. And so when a group of people decided, the pastor and David Frauenschuh and a couple of other people, decided that they would in fact cover up the embezzlement, pay off the loan and hide the accounting errors through an audit that was controlled, and a whole series of other things that were wrong. your dad did ultimately end up resigning. That was in 2005. In 2010, though, I met again with David Frauenschuh, and that's when I learned about the embezzlement and that Audrey had been sent to another church in Topeka, Kansas. She was the person who was embezzling funds, and she had taken a large sum of money from a gentleman under the condition that it would be used for an Alaska youth trip in 2003. But the reality is that those funds weren't needed, and she in fact ended up taking some of those funds. So the thing is that that was a very troubling time, and in 2010 when I met with David and found out the truth, I informed him and the pastor that I intended to go back and apologize to the church for resigning. And what I didn't realize at the time was that there were some circumstances that had occurred in my life between 2005 and 2010 that were done as a result of my resignation, because David Frauenschuh did not want me to resign, and I ended up resigning. So when I said that I was going to stand before the congregation and apologize, that's when, shortly after that, somebody at Crossview, probably Stephen Wheeler, contacted the Edina Police Department and asked for undercover police officers to be at all the Sunday services for months. And it is also when the next month somebody at Crossview, likely the Frauenschuhs, and Stephen Wheeler was behind it, because I don't think it went much further than that, but they hired a man by the name of Malcolm Eric Johns, who lives over in Edina, and he spray painted the churches with specific markings. Those markings were meant to implicate your father. What they intended to do was not only cover up the embezzlement and keep it covered up, but now that I was going to go before the church and ask to apologize, they intended to get rid of me. And they're doing that now in 2012 through all the actions. Anybody that can cover up embezzlement, anyone that can have an accounting firm hide the accounting errors from an entire congregation, and can hire an individual to vandalize churches with markings that would be used to implicate another man, me, as the vandal, by uncovering the facts of what the numbers and the letters meant, and then to come back with a story like, you know what, this is a disgruntled former president of the congregation, and they had a bone to pick with some of the staff people, and there was nothing ever uncovered, and the audit proved that the church was in great standing, and all this kind of stuff. And here they went and vandalized all these churches out of anger and out of whatever else they were going to manufacture. But the whole intent of it was then to have me locked up and thrown, and have the key thrown away. They didn't end up succeeding, because I went to the Edina Police Department along with 18 other people that I had asked to join me from the Edina Citizens Academy, Police Academy, which I had attended along with 4 other classes. And so we all went to try and solve the mystery. Well, by me having spearheaded the effort, it was a little hard for anybody to come back and say, well, he's the vandal. But it took me a year to figure out what the markings all meant, and then I stood before the men at BSF in the spring of 2011 and gave my testimonial, and I said that we need to take responsibility for whoever vandalized those churches.
We talked to the police, and they didn't really know exactly what it was, except that they were consistent markings on all the churches in the area.
A few blocks away.
And it wasn't but a couple of weeks after that, actually a couple of days after that, that Edina Police Detective Victor Conters submitted the complaint, which began the process of getting Malcolm Eric Johns arrested for the vandalism of the churches. So he's the man that they hired, and when no one was caught and somebody needed to be caught, they went back to him and they betrayed him. They double-crossed him. They ended up issuing a hearing for him. He never showed up for the hearing, and they issued a warrant for his arrest. Now, what that caused is, with a warrant for the arrest, they went to his house to bring him down, and he quote unquote resisted arrest, and they tasered him. Well, once you resist arrest and there's a warrant out for your arrest, you're kind of behind the 8 ball at that point, and so they locked him away. And then at the very first hearing, which your dad attended, the judge said that he was concerned that he's incompetent to stand trial. And what that meant is he was going to be psychiatrically evaluated. Now, this is a vandalism that occurred a year earlier in a span of 4 days, never occurred after that, and Malcolm Eric Johns never vandalized anything prior to that or after that event. But now he's locked up, no one can touch him, nobody can communicate with him, and he is deemed by a forensic psychiatrist that he is in fact insane, and he is a threat to either himself or to others. Those 2 conditions are the magical keys that allow the courts to send you involuntarily to a mental hospital and to be involuntarily drugged. That is exactly what they're doing to your father right now. They are attempting to have me deemed insane and a threat by Dr. Christine Keeneland, who I've never met and I never spoke with, and yet she wrote a report saying that I was that. And that allowed Judge Blazer to then order me put into the mental health court. And that's where I've been fighting to get free and to get my life back together. But it's not looking very good. Frankly, the immense wealth of a billionaire by the name of David Frauenschuh and a corrupt and foolish pastor by the name of Stephen Wheeler are destroying our family, because she sees no hope for me. She sees no hope in my ability or in God's ability, even though she says it here in the letter, God's ability to do all things. And so with that, she's trying to protect you guys. And the divorce is part of that. I still love your mother. The woman that wrote this letter is the woman that I will always love. And I've always been there for you guys at all your events, and doing everything that I could as a dad to help you and guide you and encourage you so that you can grow up to be men of integrity. So that's what I've been doing, and unfortunately I've also been trying to fight the bad guys. And the bad guys are very powerful, and they're very influential, and they control a lot of people. And when you try to go up against somebody like that, oftentimes David does not beat Goliath. Goliath oftentimes wins. And this just might be one of those times. But I wanted you guys to hear that letter, because that's who your mother, that's the woman that I married. And that's the woman that 14 years into the marriage wrote something like that. So I still love her, and I forgive her, and I wish it could be different, but I realize that things are not looking very good at all. So I love you guys very much. I miss you tremendously, and I pray all the time that God will watch over you and guide you and make you into the men that He wants you to be, and that you be strong and not succumb to the corruption and the evil and the bad people that are out there. Always hold your head up high. Always do the right thing. Be men of integrity and courage and conviction. And you know what? God in the end will reward you for that. I love you guys. Bye-bye.